If you're thinking about moving to Southwest Florida, do not until you watch this video, because we're going to go over some things maybe you haven't thought about yet. So let's dive in, right? Number one, the weather and the climate. And our summer times can be warm. It's typically up into the 90s or higher, so be prepared to sweat regularly. So we talked about the temperature, but it's also the humidity. It is quite a humid area. It's just something, to me, you gotta get used to. The more time you spend outdoors, the more time you get used to it. If you're always in an air-conditioned office all the time, you're probably not gonna get used to it. But there's ways to enjoy it. That's why most homes down here, we have pools. We like to do activities out on the water. And it's interesting because you might, I always thought it was odd, but you'll see people actually wearing long sleeves. The long sleeves actually keep you cooler because the actual sun is not beating on your skin the whole time. So it's an interesting thing I've learned since living down here. Think about hurricane season. It runs from June to November. There is a risk for it, but down here, I don't know where you're at and what you've seen on the news. A lot of wind, a lot of rain, and if you're in a flood zone, there could be some flooding for it. But typically we know we have a good heads up about it, and our construction these days is built to withstand these. The most recent hurricane actually came over where I live. We did have some damage to our pool cage. We did lose some shingles, but our house is still there. We didn't have any flooding into it. So that's where it's important about having that construction process and picking out good spots to live. Two, that reason is cost of living. There's a cost of living in paradise. I said it before when I moved down here from Southwest, the suburbs of Chicago. It was cheaper at the time here, but I actually got quoted because I wasn't making very much at the fire department down here, and they said, do you realize what we pay? And I said, you can't put a price. I'm living in paradise. So there is a price that comes to it, but I think there's a better quality of life because you get to spend so much more time outdoors and appreciating the climate here instead of being indoors all the time, working all the time. Also, living comes house prices. House prices have gone up quite a bit. If you're coming from one of the northern states where it's a little bit more expensive, you might not notice that as much. But it's not as maybe affordable as it used to be. Stuff has gone up because everyone knows about this great state that we live in, and people want to be in that coastal environment to live that boating lifestyle. Property taxes. All right, property taxes have gone up, but if you're a permanent resident down here, we have something called the homestead exemption, which kind of locks it in, so it can only raise a small percent each year as opposed to drastic climb in your property taxes. So that's a controlled measure to keep it affordable for those of us living down here. Home insurance. Home insurance, got to shop around. I do know people that have been dropped, so they have to keep shopping around for it. I'm still kind of waiting to see what goes on with ours. We've been lucky so far, but we know it's going to go up. Just how much is it going to go up? So that's something to keep in factor of when you're looking for places, is getting a quote from your insurance company to find out, hey, what is it going to cost? Number three, let's talk about the traffic infrastructure. It's still a growing area, but because it's grown so much, I really don't think the infrastructure is there. So we do have some traffic issues at peak hours, and it's maybe not as bad as some places, but it's something you have to definitely plan on because we do utilize a lot of bridges for traffic, and so that's minimal access to places, and there probably could be some better highway placement. So the traffic is increasing with the population. That's just kind of what it is, but something to be aware about if you're coming. It's not that sleepy town that it was 20 plus years ago. This place still has seasonal residents. It seems to be less and less every year. Most people are deciding to stay, but we call them snowbirds, and they come down in the wintertime. So there is a definitely notice in the roads, restaurant wait time, stuff like that, come snowbird season, because the population does grow at that time. And you got to think, where you live, a lot of it's based on the normal population. You can't plan for the excess because your infrastructure government entities can't afford that. So keep that in mind, that we do have that seasonal time, which most coastal areas do. Talk about wildlife and nature. Definitely a diverse wildlife down here. As you can see behind me, we actually live on a freshwater canal that is blocked to the saltwater by a weir system. But there's times back here we've actually been seeing a lot more iguanas lately. We have different kinds of fish that are going in there, but we also have alligators, snakes, and that's just this area. You get more wooded areas. There are black bears and panthers. So it's a very diverse area with that, but I kind of enjoy it because where I grew up, I think we saw rabbits and squirrels. That was about it, which we have them also. Nature preservation, in Florida, we're pretty big about that. So there's a lot of places that are protected, and if you like to go for hikes and explore it, different controlled areas to see the wildlife in their own habitat, you can do that. So Florida's real big on property conservation with nature and we like to protect our waters and our ecosystem as much as possible. The last part you got to know about is the job market and the economy. Might not have the same jobs that you have where you're at. It is mostly a service-based industry down here, so that's why you see a lot of firemen, police, waitresses, waiters, maybe rentals, you know, for boats or jet skis, because that's just the predominant. But what's interesting is it is growing, and I'm seeing more diverse job opportunities pop up as we've gotten bigger. Well, another thing is remote possibilities. Maybe you've got a job you can live wherever, so if you can make the money for big cities like New York or Chicago or LA, but you could live here, now you're talking, right? Sign me up for that one. But that being said, I really kind of want to touch base on a few of these aspects for you so you can consider them before moving down here. But just remember, whether you're thinking about moving in 9 days or 90 days, give me a call, shoot me a text, jump on a Zoom call with me, because I'd love to show you around town.